Can't believe I made this idiotic mistake. Completely ridiculous what happened. Finished the whole job, the new toilet's installed, and it doesn't flush, and it all has to come off again. I'm just so bothered by the fact I let this happen. It's obligatory to drop at least one nut. G'day folks, it's DIY Guy 123 here, bringing you another do-it-yourself video. Today we're going to be changing out this toilet. It's not a difficult job, I'm going to show you how to do it. First things first, you got to get rid of that water. Turn the valve off. Now, the valve, you don't need to crank it on super tight. You want to tighten it just enough so that the water stops coming up here. If it is over tightened, you'll damage the rubber washer that's in there. So, shut it off. Give the toilet a final flush to empty the tank. And you notice it's going to fill up a little bit. So what do we do about that? Well, take a plunger and just plunge it a bit and it'll drive the rest of that water out of there. Maybe not all of it, but the majority of it. And then we're going to undo this hard line right here. I'm going to be replacing it with a flexible braided line anyway. We're going to undo the hard line there, and then we'll undo these bolts. And then I'll come back at you in a minute. Okay, one little trick when you do flush it for the last time, make sure you hold the valve open until the tank fully drains, or drains as much as it can, and then plunge the water out, and then use a yogurt container or some kind of small plastic container to clean up what's down there. Do yourself a favor, before, especially if you get someone else to come in and do this, clean this area up. You don't want to have someone come in, even if it's being thrown out. It's a polite gesture to anybody you hire to do this job, if you're going to hire somebody or help you with it, to have this clean. Anyway, so I got the bolts off here. This one came off easy because it had a cap on it. Came off easy. This one did not, and I had to actually use a grinder to grind it off because it was not coming up. There was no cap on it, and the nut had corroded right to the bolt. I detached the hard line from the top of the toilet. I'll deal with getting a hard line off the floor after. We got this off the floor, and we will get this out of here. It's a two-person job. Okay, so we've got our bolts in place, and this is what they look like. And they drop down into the slot and slide there, and now they're in place. Okay, so these little plastic washers really helps if you take the bolts out. Push the plastic washers down, not all the way, but almost all the way, and then force them into the little track. And now look at how stiff they are. They don't move at all. Next is we've got our hose in place, and after that we're going to put the wax ring on the bottom of the horn, which is on the bottom of the toilet. You want to have the wax ring at least 70 degrees or about 20 degrees Celsius so that you can, so that it will flatten out a bit. I've got my metal washers and my plastic washers and the nuts and the wrench, and the wax ring has been under somebody's shirt to get warm. And you take the wax ring and at this orientation and place it over top of the horn like so, and you want to center it. And then once you get it centered, you give it kind of a pushy rotatey, and then check for it to be centered again. And you only need to push this down enough to stick to the bowl long enough to turn it over so it doesn't fall off on the floor. Because once it gets dropped down into the flange, it holds itself in place that way. Now here's something to watch out for. This wax ring protrudes out further than the width of the bolts. So when I put the bolts down, or when I put this down on top of the bolts, I expect the bolts to kind of interfere with that wax, but the bolts will just push the wax out of the way. See the wax ring on there? Bolts are in place. I can see the bolts. Set this down, not pushing too hard. I'm basically rocking the toilet bowl over top of that wax ring. So you couldn't see, but I just measured from the wall to the center line here and the wall to the center line here. I want it parallel to that wall. Next, we put the plastic washer on. So it actually says run on this side up. So it'll be oriented like that, and the plastic cap will go on it like this. So we have plastic washer, we have a metal washer, we have the nut. We do the same on the other side. So I'm sitting on the bowl right now, trying to just smush that wax ring. Once you get it smushed, you can give these bolts another tight and they'll loosen up as the wax ring smushes down. Don't get carried away. You can break the bowl. Now you remember when I was doing the tile video, I used a straight edge to set the tiles. This is the time when you're going to notice whether you've done that right. Because if the toilet rocks front to back or side to side, you'll know that you didn't. Next, I've got this large rubber gasket onto the tank threaded fitting on the bottom. And this flips upside down and sits right on top of the bowl. Now, this is a little precarious right now. You don't want to take your hand off of this. Your tank bolts, nut off, washer off, and here's the rubber gasket. This goes in the inside, so it's going to drop down from the inside like that. Do the same for the other side. It's obligatory to drop at least one nut. And the washer goes on the bottom and the nut below that, and that secures the whole works. Okay, so down there we'll see the bolt with the rubber washer under it, the rubber gasket, and it's best to hold that bolt and not turn the bolt. So hold the bolt and tighten the nut, and that way you won't strain the rubber gasket. And what we're doing is we're going to tighten this until this comes in contact with this. Put your braided hose on here. I've already turned the valve on and run this hose into a bucket to flush anything that got loosened up when I did this project, or any dirt that dropped down on the top of the valve. Screw it in hand tight, and that's it. The last part of this is to put the trigger for the light flush and the heavy flush through the tank top, like that. And then put the lock. So I can't believe I made this idiotic mistake. Completely ridiculous what happened. Finished the whole job, new toilet's installed, and it doesn't flush, and it all has to come off again. Just so bothered by the fact I let this happen. This project took about a month from the time I took the old toilet off and the new one on. So to keep sewer gas from coming up, I took a Ziploc bag and put a bunch of other plastic bags inside of it to give it some bulk, and zipped it up and shoved it down the pipe. My dog kept messing with it and pulling it out, so I shoved it down further out of the dog's reach, and I forgot it down there when I put the toilet on the first time. Can't believe it. Put it all back together, won't flush. I have to take the thing off and do it again. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked the video, please subscribe, and good luck with your do-it-yourself projects.